In the opening scene, we see two completely different scenes. While Neves is celebrating her birthday surrounded by her parents, Yaman struggles to form a smile on his face. Flashbacks of a horrible scene come back to him as he decides to take his. The moment he cuts his veins is the moment Neves faints as well, so they're both rushed to the hospital. However, Neves suffers from congenital cardiomyopathy, and Yaman needs transfusion due to a big loss of blood. Their loved ones wait anxiously for them to wake up and eventually fall asleep. As Neves wakes up, she notices her mother sleeping, so she quietly exits the room with the infusion by her side. Strolling the hall for a bit, she sees Yaman sleeping in his room, so she leaves. He finally wakes up as well, but instead of being happy, he scrunches the covers of the bed in his hand out of frustration. Neves tries to go by the reception unnoticed, but the nurses recognize her and warn her that she shouldn't be out of her bed. However, Neves assures the nurse that she's fine and asks about Yaman. Shocked to find out that he tried to hurt himself, Neves heads to his room to find out the reason behind it. Seeing him awaken, she starts bombarding him with questions as to why he would hurt his healthy body. Confused as to who the girl is, Yaman tries to call for a nurse and even asks her to leave, but Neves doesn't budge. Turning his back to her, he eventually falls asleep but wakes up to Neves still being there. He calls the nurse, and she walks in with Neves' mother, who luckily for Yaman, takes her out of the room. As the results come in, Neves' parents are told some horrible news. The doctor tells them that Neves is at a very critical stage in her disease and asks them to prepare for the worst. Her mother breaks down as her father holds her, but they don't know that Neves heard everything, so she decides to comfort her parents as they join in a group hug, holding each other tight. Yaman is asked by the doctor to seek some psychological help, but he just wants to go home. The doctor tries to reason with him, but Yaman asks to be let out immediately. Having heard the whole bickering, Neves decides to tell Yaman the reason why she keeps showing up to talk to him. For as long as she can remember, she has feared death and lived with that fear her whole life. She reveals that she doesn't have much time left but claims to believe in miracles. There is so much she would give to be in his position, to have more time. She is mostly sad about her parents. The fact that they celebrate every birthday like it's her last breaks her heart. That is why her mother named her Neves, which means breath, so that every breath in her life counts. Getting emotional, she raises her voice while telling him how unjust he is to himself, and how wrong he is. However, with a cold stare, he asks her to get out of the room. Some time passes and they both get out of the hospital. Instead of moving on with her life, Neves decides to visit Yaman and find out what truly led him to do such a horrible thing to himself. Her mother, worried, tries to stop her and she keeps reminding her that it's dangerous, but Neves doesn't listen to her as she packs her suitcase for the trip. Her mother finally agrees but asks her to text every hour, so she knows her daughter is fine. Arriving at the house, Neves is surprised to see Yaman, but he ignores her. Getting in his vehicle, he rides off, leaving Neves behind. She is shocked that he had just left her there, but she decides to patiently wait for his return. However, once he returns, he ignores her once again and even closes the door on her. She bangs on the door for him to open it, but he is nowhere to be seen. So, she makes it known that she will be standing there until he opens, and so she does. The night falls and Yaman checks to see if she's still there. Thinking that she's finally gone, he decides to go to bed, but he doesn't know that Neves is still stranded in front of his door. Hearing wolves in the distance scares Neves, so she decides to climb over the fence, and she fastly realizes that she could have done that all along. Dragging her suitcase with her, she finally gets up the steps and rushes to the door. The fear grows in her as she bangs the door and Yaman finally opens. Falling into his arms, she soon realizes that she's hugging him, so she quickly lets go. Instead of welcoming her, he throws her a blanket and heads back to bed. In the morning, he is woken up by Neves playing with the swans. He grunts in annoyance as he gets out of bed to get ready. Neves is distracted by the swans and birds, so he decides to chop some wood and mind his business, trying to be unnoticed. However, she catches a glimpse of him and starts following him around. Having had enough, he asks her what she wants from him and she lets him know that she wants to stay with him for a week. He demands her to leave, but she's determined to stay. Not wanting to entertain the conversation further, he climbs the tower to get some peace, but she follows right behind. She begs him for a chance, claiming that she could help him see the light, and if she doesn't help him, she promises to disappear from his life and he will never see her again. He asks her why she wants to help him and she pulls out a small notebook from her pocket. Revealing that it's her book of things she wants to do before passing, she shows him where she has written, "Change somebody's life." Again, she asks him not to refuse a wish from a dying girl, so he has no choice but to accept. Later in the evening, we see her looking around his rather unique living room while he prepares dinner. He sits down with a plate for himself and she immediately gets offended as she assumes that he plans on leaving her hungry. However, he points to the back of him where a plate awaits her. Apologizing for her assumptions, she sits next to him, and while he enjoys his food, she struggles to keep quiet. Calling him a good man, she tries to break the ice, but instead, she's met with his rudeness. He reminds her that she knows nothing about him as he gets up and leaves. The fire burns before his eyes as various thoughts seem to be running through his head. Neef sits next to him, offering him some tea, but he doesn't budge. She begins telling him the story about happiness and angels, and tears start filling his eyes. Angels have thought about where to hide happiness, and in humans, they thought, happiness comes from within, so if we truly want to be happy, we have to pay attention to ourselves and look for the happiness inside of us. The next morning, Hamza, Yaman's friend, walks into the house not noticing Neef sleeping on the bed as he tries to light up the fire. Neef wakes up and startles the poor man as she tries to introduce herself. Hamza is surprised as Yaman doesn't have guests often, but Neef assures him that she's an unwanted guest as well. Yaman can be seen with the horses, showing them love and feeding them. Neef greets him and tells him that he could be nice to people as well. However, Yaman lets her know that horses are better than people as they don't force him to do what he doesn't want, and don't insist on things, and most importantly, they don't speak. Excited about her stay, she pulls out her planner to tell Yaman what they'll do in the following 6 days. Firstly, she wants him to show her around the farm and let her meet him up with some friends, and as she continues down the list, Yaman can't help but roll his eyes in annoyance. Some time passes and Neef seems to be making the place a bit brighter. Hamza thanks her for her willingness, but Neef can't help but ask why Yaman is so antisocial. Hamza lets her know that Yaman had been a completely different man only 2 years ago, but on one specific day he had become a different man after something happened. Neef tries to find out what exactly had happened, but Hamza stops himself from revealing too much since it's not his business. However, he assures her that a great man hides behind that hard shell of his. To show him how privileged he is for being healthy, Neef takes him to a children's hospital where many children can be seen fighting for their life. Like her, they don't know when their time will come but are happy to enjoy the time they have. As they're walking out of the hospital, Neef suddenly feels dizzy, but luckily it's nothing and she gets up. They join a support group where one brave man hopes to beat the disease and finally let one girl know that he likes her. Another man in the group takes his disability lightly. He had gone home with a girl, and while they were undressing, they realized that both of them had something missing which bonded them. His positivity and goofiness bring a smile to Yaman's face, and he can't help but crack up. He finally decides to be honest with Neef, and that takes her by surprise. In the middle of the lake, as they sit in their kayak, Yaman reveals that it was his fault his parents passed away. We are taken back to the incident where we see happy Yaman and his parents moments before the disaster. A car comes flashing their way and Yaman struggles to get control of the wheel, which results in his car crashing, killing his parents instantly. He blames himself for their death, but Neef asks him not to. He thinks that he doesn't deserve to be alive since he killed the people that gave him life, but Neef reminds him that it was just a horrible incident. He needs to learn how to forget, move on, and continue living his life. Proud of him for taking the first step, she hugs him tightly but soon retracts since he doesn't budge. While Neef is on a mission to change Yaman's life, her mother misses her horribly. Looking around her room, she can't help but think about the time she'll be gone, and that makes her sad. Neef's father walks in and sees his wife laying on Neef's pillow. He asks her what's wrong and she breaks down while asking many questions about the future regarding their daughter's disease. The next morning, Neef decides to take Yaman on an adventure, but as she gets in the car, he refuses to go, claiming that he won't even sit behind the wheel. She tries to drag him into the car, but he accidentally hurts her hand while doing so. Holding her wrist in pain, Neef lets him know that it hurts a lot and he apologizes. Feeling bad about hurting her, he agrees on going as long as she drives. As they're sitting on the hill, enjoying the snow, Yaman wonders how she approaches her illness so lightly. Every second counts for Neef. She wants to spend her life joking around and not sorrowing her disease. She advises him not to look back on things and to realize how lucky he is, but he lets her know that his soul hurts. In the middle of the night, Neef is woken up by the storm and she becomes scared. Not knowing what to do in such a situation, she sneakily gets to Yaman's room and lays next to him in bed. However, she doesn't notice that he has woken up as well, so as she lays next to him it brings a smile to his face. Waking up the next morning, Yaman sees a note on where Neef slept and fears that she might have left him. However, he smiles when he reads that Neef has asked him to come to the given address as a surprise, given that it's their last day together. At 5, we see Yaman walking into a ballroom where Neef is playing the cello. After a beautiful performance, Neef thanked the audience before greeting Yaman. He compliments her performance but wonders why she hadn't told him that she could play the cello. Neef lets him know that the cello has been her only real friend since she started playing it at a very young age. Right as Neef is about to say something about their last day, a lady comes on stage and starts talking about love. Love is immortal, love works miracles, and love brings back to life are words that hurt Neef. So after getting a last glance at Yaman, she disappears into the crowd. Coming back to his senses, Yaman realizes that she's gone, but it's too late for him to do anything. Returning home, a million thoughts seem to be running through his mind. Hamza asks him what's wrong and Yaman reveals that Neef has left him. Hamza lets him know that it was he who let her go away while he should have begged her to stay. Yaman is conflicted as he doesn't want to get involved with her since she will pass away soon. But Hamza advises him to go make her happy while she still has time. Opening the entrance door, Neef's mother is happy to see Yaman standing there, so she wastes no time and lets him into her daughter's room. Neef isn't happy to see him and makes it known that she doesn't want to be with him, but he doesn't give up. He asks her not to be a coward and be as brave as she wants him to be, but she opens the door so he can leave. Slamming the door closed, Yaman asks her why she doesn't give him a chance, and that's when she breaks down. She reminds him that she's dying, so it would be harder for her to pass away knowing that someone will be heartbroken for her. Getting on his knees, he assures her that their fate can be changed, but she believes that it's too late for a chance, so she asks him to leave for the last time. He tries to reason with her, but she sticks by her decision, so he leaves. Her mother had heard everything since we see her standing in the hall. Getting inside Neef's room, she lets her know that she's making a mistake. Neef thinks that nobody understands that there is an inevitable end for her, but her mother reminds her that it's the same for everyone. Depriving herself and Yaman from happiness will do no good, so she says. Sitting down next to her, her mother tells her the story of when she was born and how the doctor had advised her to give birth to a second child. She didn't listen to him, as there was no guarantee that that child would stay alive as well. Instead, she focused on Neef's. Every breath Neef takes is a sign of hope, but tomorrow isn't promised, so her mother advises her to experience the present. Tears fall on Neef's face as she realizes that she needs to give herself a chance, so she embraces her mother in a hug while telling her that she loves her. As Yaman sits on the pier, hopeless of ever seeing Neef again, she approaches him from behind, embracing him in a hug. Looking at the sky, tears start filling Yaman's eyes as he's grateful that she has returned. Before he could say anything, Neef asks him to promise her not to hurt himself once she's gone, and if he does so, she promises to never leave his side. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Yaman turns to face her, and instead of answering, he kisses her passionately. Time passes and the new couple seems to be hitting it off. They enjoy living in the countryside, doing activities in nature, taking care of the animals, and riding horses. As they sit cuddled up one evening, Neef lets him know that he's not as sensitive as she thought he was, but he blames it on luck as he is the luckiest man to have found the most perfect girl for himself. She thinks that he's exaggerating, but he assures her that she's the bravest girl he knows. As they return home from the cold, they rush to the fire to warm up. Yaman gets a blanket and covers his girl, and as they are enjoying the fire, the power goes out. Lighting all of the candles sets the mood as they embrace the romantic setting to make love for the first time. Cuddled up in a blanket by the fire, the couple enjoys their peaceful night. The following day, they go to an old abandoned train station where Yaman goes to relax. After walking for a while, they lay down on the railway to relax. The railway station represents a place of longing for Yaman. That's why he reveals that he comes often when he's feeling lonely, in hopes that someone would show up, like his mother and father. Luckily for him, his wait is finally over as Neef has entered his life. Putting his hand up, Yaman reveals the ring he's holding in his hand. Shocked, Neef gets up and Yaman assures her that he doesn't care when their story ends. All he wants is to spend every moment with her. Finally, he asks her to marry him and she finds it hard to say anything. Shocked she is, but he puts the ring on her finger and it all becomes clear. After the engagement, Yaman meets her parents as well, who seem to love him. Her father jokes about how Neef can be stubborn and controlling, but her mother takes her side as she reminds him that in marriage it will always be how the woman says. They laugh as they enjoy their dinner. As Neef is working around the kitchen, Yaman comes to the door asking her to open it. However, she decides to joke around and refuses to open the door, so he asks her to come closer. Coming closer, she sees him leaning in for a kiss through the glass, so she does the same. Keeping the romantic gestures coming, they draw hearts for each other on the fogged-up glass, until Neef finally lets him in and they share a real kiss. Later in the afternoon, as they're deciding on what to have for dinner, Neef faints and falls to the ground. Panicked, Yaman rushes her to the car, but once he gets to it, the trauma comes back to him, making it hard for him to drive. His hands struggle to catch the treating wheel. However, he powers through and drives Neef to the emergency. The nurses take her in, but Yaman can't stay calm as they push him out in the hall. The doctor comes out and he starts screaming at her, asking if there's anything she can do, but she calms him down and assures him that they're already on it. Waking up, Neef sees Yaman by her side, so she apologizes for ruining their dinner. They joke around, so she tells him to say what he wants, and he asks for a miracle. She had thought that she was the only one that believed in miracles, but Yaman lets her know that he wants to give her a miracle. They waste no time after the incident and get married straight away. Neef stands in a beautiful white gown as her parents stare at her in awe. Her father takes her hands in his and reminisces about the time when she was just a little girl. However, he lets her know that they are not parting and that they'll always be there for each other. Turning around, Neef's mother sees Yaman by the door, so she goes to him. Letting him know that he enabled her to walk her daughter down the aisle, she thanks him and lets him know that it's good that he's there. The soon-to-be married couple walks down the pier where they promised each other their love in the beginning. Smiles on their loved ones as Yaman and Neef say their I do's and officially become husband and wife. Later in the evening, they have a party at Yaman's house where he gathers everyone's attention to say something about his new wife. Looking into her eyes reminds her that their love is above all, as their two broken hearts manage to come together. He promises to forever love her and be brave to achieve her dream. Neve smiles through the tears and they share a kiss. The newlyweds slowly dance with the rest of the couples in the name of love. They spend the evening dancing and celebrating love. Married life goes great for them as we see them doing all sorts of things, from enjoying their alone time at the pier to going to support groups and helping the unfortunate children. They even write letters to each other and throw them into the water at the pier, as it is their place of promise. Making a bouquet for his wife, Yaman excitedly calls out her name as he gets to the house, but he finds her laying by the fireplace. Thinking that she's asleep, he tries waking her gently, but he soon realizes that she has passed out as she doesn't move. He caresses her hand as she wakes up. Asking her not to be scared, he lets her know that she'll have to stay at the hospital for a while to feel better, but she refuses to. She turns to her father and reminds him that they have talked about her not wanting to be chained to the apparatus. However, Yaman chimes in to let her know that her father doesn't make the choices, and neither does she. If she wants him to keep his promise, she has to fight till the end just like she taught him. She starts crying and repeating that she doesn't want to die in the hospital, but he assures her that it won't happen. He asks her to keep fighting for them, and little does she know what that means. Having trust in him, she promises to fight till the very end, for them. The day that everyone dreaded comes as the doctor reveals that Neve has little left, and will have to be on the apparatus for the remainder of it. It breaks the hearts of her parents as well as Yaman, but they pretend that everything is fine in front of her. Not able to stand looking at his wife in such a state, Yaman leaves and goes home to cuddle with her pillow. As he squeezes the pillow to smell her scent, he finds her planner behind the pillow. He reads about the time he had smiled first in front of her when he first told her that he loved her, not knowing that she was totally in love with him. She prays for his safety but asks God to help her stay away from him. However, as he turns the page, he reads about her calling him her miracle, and how her heart had started beating for the first time. She wishes to be with him forever. She wishes for the disease not to be there so she can give birth to children with his eyes, and even grow old with him. Yaman starts crying as her words cut deep into his soul. Neve wakes up, and as she notices that Yaman isn't by her side, she asks for him. Yaman sits with the notepad in his hand thinking about the decision that will change Neve's life. She calls him, asking where he is while assuring him that she's fighting for them. Feeling weaker, she asks to see him as she doesn't want to pass away without him by her side. However, he promises her that she has more time. Hearing that, she drops the phone, and the last thing she says is he promises before passing away. Her mother runs to the nurses and they try to revive her, but it seems like her time has come. Yaman runs to the hospital, but when he gets there, the unexpected happens. He struggles to catch his breath, and as the nurses come to help him, he tells them to stay away. Pulling out a gun from his pocket, he shoots to save his wife. His organs are donated to other people in need while his heart is a perfect match for Neve's. Neve wakes up with the incredible news that they have found a match for her, but she doesn't know that it was Yaman. As she goes into the operating room, her parents wait for her, and the father is the one who breaks the news to her mother. Shocked, she doesn't believe that Yaman isn't alive, but once she realizes that he's the donor, she starts sobbing while calling out his name. We see Neve after the surgery, and while she looks healthy, it is her soul that hurts. In the letter he has left for her, he lets her know that she was his calling. Once she entered his life, he knew that God was calling for him to clear his sins and calm his consciousness. However, it is not only her that will get a chance at life, but two boys who were in need. Walking into the house, Neve gets overwhelmed by all the memories in it. In the letter, he asks her not to visit the places they once went to since it won't heal her heart. Neve finally sees the plan that Yaman had all along. When she entered, she gave him life, and it is only right he gave his life to the right person. He knows that she may be angry and that it may hurt, but he assures her that it will pass. He is sure that she'll take care of him. That's why he tells her that one breath is enough for the both of them.